Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Beal, president of Saratoga Book Festival. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a night of poetry, a presentation of Saratoga Pride and Saratoga Book Festival Online. In addition to tonight's program, Saratoga Pride and SBF will be hosting 2 additional Pride Reads event this month. We welcome you to check out Saratoga Pride's website and Facebook page and saratogabookfestival.org for more information about these and other great events. We hope you enjoyed tonight, and we hope to see you on October 15th through 17th when Saratoga Book Festival holds our very first live literary event in downtown Saratoga Springs. We'd love to have you sign up for mailings and announcements, perhaps volunteer and donate to support an event that hopes to get Saratoga residents and visitors reading. But now let's get to tonight's program. I'd like to introduce you all to Cindy Swadba, one of the founders of Saratoga Pride, without whom this event would not be happening. Cindy, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ellen, for that very generous introduction. I'm a volunteer with Saratoga Pride. And this being June and it being Pride Month, we in Saratoga Springs are incredibly excited to introduce our Pride Colored Crosswalk. If you haven't seen it in Saratoga, it is between Congress Park, the Carousel, and the Hawthorne Spring. And it just brings such warm, vibrant colors to Saratoga. And I was there the other day. There was a family with 3 little children who were hopping from color to color, saying the name of the color as they were going. So it's also a display of public art. Being Pride Month, we have a couple other events coming up. Tomorrow, actually at the Mansion Inn in Rock City Falls, we have a Pride cocktail party from 5 to 7. The Mansion Inn has a gorgeous deck with an enormous tent over it, and it's very airy and very comfortable. And we like to support our friends at the Mansion Inn. In addition, we have a Pride bike ride with Trek Saratoga, and it's on June 27th. It starts at 9 a.m. It's a slow ride, I think 10 miles, 12 miles. And this is Trek's nationwide. The Trek bicycle stores are doing this on this day at the same time nationwide. So that'll be a lot of fun to hear more about. As Ellen suggested, we have 2 more authors and author panels, and I'm very much looking forward to them. And if you're interested in SaratogaPride.com is the place to find us, or on Facebook. So thanks, Ellen, for that opportunity. I think you're.
Thank you, Cindy. And now please join me in welcoming Kim Alkemade, our curator of tonight's online literary chat. Saratoga Springs resident, Kim is the author of 2 historical novels, the New York Times best-selling Orphan No. 8, which has been translated into 11 languages, and the international best-selling Bachelor Girl. Her creative nonfiction essays have appeared in literary journals such as the Alaska Quarterly Review and Cut Bank. She earned her PhD in English from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and currently teaches writing at Shippensburg University. She's currently at work on a 3rd historical novel published by Simon & Schuster. It's great to see you, Kim, and thanks so much for all your work on the series. Now let me turn things over to you and our wonderful presenters for tonight's program.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate that. It's been really my pleasure to be a bit more involved in Saratoga, Saratoga Pride, and Saratoga Book Festival. And I'm so grateful to Nicole Santalucia for agreeing to be part of this event tonight. It's really, I don't know, I'm just so looking forward to hearing you read and hearing more about your poems and your poetry. Nicole Santalucia is the author of her latest, The Book of Dirt, from New York Quarterly Books. She's also the author of Spoiled Meat from Headmistress Press and Because I Did Not Die from Bordighera Press. She's the recipient of the Charlotte Mew Chapbook Prize and the Edna St. Vincent Millay Poetry Prize. Her work has appeared in publications such as the Best American Poetry, Cincinnati Review, the Rumpus, TINGE Magazine, and other literary venues. She and I both teach together at Shippensburg University in Pennsylvania, and Nicole's originally from Binghamton. I'm now a resident of Saratoga, so we feel really connected with this area. And Nicole, I'll welcome you to Saratoga Pride Reads, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kim. It's great to be here with all of you. I wish I could be there in person, but this is going to have to do. And I am going to start with a couple of poems. I chose 2 poems from my first book, Because I Did Not Die, because it's rooted in New York and I really want to be in New York. And it seems appropriate for the event. I chose my gayest poems for tonight. They're all gay and they're all the gayest poems. So however I go, it's not going to go wrong here. So this is called The Day We Got Married. And it's from my book, Because I Did Not Die. The day we got married, it was like getting a fishing license or registering a boat, as if we were headed down to the Susquehanna under the State Street Bridge looking for dinner, on the riverbank or in the murky waters surrounding Binghamton. The day we got married, we went through metal detectors, put our house keys in a bucket, handed them to the security guard at City Hall. It was like we handed over fistfuls of concrete on Hawley Street. On our wedding day, a fat cloud sat in an office, didn't get up when the city clerk opened the door. The couple in front of us, George and Paul, exchanged handkerchiefs instead of rings. They waited 40 years to give each other a faded piece of cloth, a stand-in for freedom that's been shoved in a back pocket. So yeah, a lot of the poems in this book are very much rooted around being in upstate New York and the Binghamton area and New York City, the 2 places I lived during the time of writing this. And yeah, I'll never forget standing in line, waiting downtown Binghamton, putting those keys in a bucket. And my friend and mentor and teacher, Maria Mazziati-Gillen, this next poem is an ode to Maria, which is the person who, I think there's a little spot on about this story of us my wife and I getting married. The day was legal in New York State, and Maria Gillen suggesting, honey, in her little raspy voice, she would say to me, honey, go get married. Go get married. I can get you a grant at the, I was in graduate school at the time. So this is Ode to Maria. Huston and Weeb share the title of this year's golf tournament in Binghamton, New York. This is just as important as the headline about gay marriage in this town. When I read the paper this morning, I thought it was funny how Huston and Weeb rhymes with fuck and dweeb. Then I realized that this was the golf tournament sponsored by Dick's Sporting Goods, and how it was just yesterday that my wife delivered a basket of cookies for one of their raffle prizes, and that some fucking dweeb would win it. The thought of some guy eating my wife's cookies makes me a little jealous. I realized the front page of the paper was folded in half, and I almost missed the article about how the sewage board okays safety inspection. Not only is this town going to shit and fucking dweebs are winning golf tournaments, but my morning is dragging on. I'm drinking too much coffee, which reminds me of just the other day when we were standing in line at the city clerk's office and how I had to pee really bad. The bathrooms were locked, and I thought about you, Maria, how you were the one who told us in your perfect scratchy voice to go get married. You are the one who I always run into in the bathrooms on campus because we both pee all the time. You know, all that limoncello and those double shots of espresso. Maria, you are the one who I want to run up to and say, I hope you are proud. I married a good Italian girl. So those are the two I was going to start with, that I started with from Because I Did Not Die. And then I was going to shift over to the Book of Dirt. And go ahead, Kim. Jump
When
in.
did the Because I Did Not Die, when did that book come out?
That came out in 2015. So it was right when I was actually starting at Shippensburg. The year after I started. Yeah. And it was the manuscript that I worked on mostly while I was working towards my doctorate, studying under Maria Gillen and the other folks at Binghamton University.
Cool.
Yeah. And the Book of Dirt, I'm actually going to start, this came out last year in February 2020. And I'm going to start with the last poem in the book. It's called, On First Having Read the Book of Dirt. On first having read the Book of Dirt and loaded the batteries into the flashlight, I take off my shoes, put on my skin. My feet listen to the earth, gather digging tools in hollow land, check the ground for homophobia and women. 25 rounds of ammunition, dry dirt, a forest floor, a myth where queers get to the other side. The dirt without grass has no name. I've walked there picking bones. First the walnut tree and then hot bullets. It is black, then brown, then earth. My face, our dream, you, splitting in half again and again and again. I can't find my shovel, so I dig for it. We wake up touching in the dirt, in the book, our hands reaching from under as if we could actually be together. The thing I came for is on the other side of the dirt, but there's no water or thirst or surface or air or sun. This is the place where there's more wreckage, more bodies. If there was a ladder, I'd climb out of the dirt. I'd gather courage to reappear and probably find myself in the middle of Pennsylvania, carrying an atlas of the difficult world and a flashlight with dead batteries. And that's the last poem in the book. The first poem begins, which I'll read at some point. You have now begun reading the Book of Dirt. So it's, it's very much book-ended with these two pieces, very specific about the volume itself and being in Pennsylvania and as being in the only state in the Northeast with the fewest, protections for LGBTQ folks. So it's been a wake-up call. I would never forget going to the DMV here and having them put a punch hole in my New York State license. It was a shot to the heart. I know, Kim, you said you had a request, which I want to fulfill immediately for a poem that you wanted me to read. Many of the poems in the volume have repeating titles that constantly, gear the reader's attention back to Pennsylvania purposefully because it captures there's a lot of darkness and pain in the poems as it's a direct result of being a gay person, a lesbian in the middle of Pennsylvania. Notes from the Commonwealth. I want to be the chicken in the front seat of that Cadillac driving down Route 11. The chicken that reaches for the steering wheel when there's another chicken in the road. The chicken that changes a flat tire and the chicken that doesn't get beat up for loving other chickens. I want to be the red feathered chicken with white feathered chicks. The chicken with big breasts that doesn't wear a bra. the chicken that can actually fly. I'd soar over Pennsylvania, over cornfields, and over the prison. I'd freed caged chickens and dig graves for dead chickens. I'd tie $1 to a string and catch the guards who guard jailed chickens. I'd wear my human costume, patrol the highways, and pull over chicken trucks. Maybe I want to be a chicken because a chicken's life is short. A chicken's panic is usually caged. Maybe I am chicken when I don't hold my wife's hand at the movies or on a walk through town. I'm chicken when I pull my arm off her shoulder after someone whispers, "Ew, homos." Chicken feathers have taken over my face and skin and courage. I'm the chicken craning my neck through bars and the chicken with a broken beak.
Well, thank you so much for that. I hear that and I can't help but get such a clear visual image in Pennsylvania where Nicole and I teach. You very often are going past a big truck just loaded with cages stuffed with chickens. Sometimes it's pigs, but a lot of trucks just stuffed with chickens. And it's, I don't know, it's really visceral to go right past all those little creatures. And we have our spoiled chickens, so I always think about them. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll keep going here. This is called From the Book of Dirt. If I'm a wife and my wife is a wife, who vacuums the house and cleans the dishes? Which wife dusts and which one does laundry? Who cleans the dirt off of the dirt? Which one of us sucks dirt and which one spits out dirt? Which one of us doesn't fit into the word wife? If wife is carved into the dirt, whose left breast falls off and whose right eye is dug out? If the wind is prayer, if dirt is 50% lesbian and 50% void, if it never rains, how do mosquitoes suck the gay out? If we live below ground in our dirt house, do we get squatters' rights? Can we sue the land if the land is our witness? If we inhale the earth, if our bodies are silent, tell us what we own. If the law of the dirt is dirt, if wives travel west of the dirt, what customary law influences property rights? If individual grains of sediment never move, if the force of gravity pulls us deeper into the dirt, if there's no gust of wind or water or ice, our marriage will never sculpt itself into a mountain. If the valley of dead women in the dirt has been our destination this whole time, all we had to do was walk barefoot in our backyard. And this poem actually started in a workshop with a bunch of students, and I happened to have a small group of about 10 or 12 students, mostly women and mostly gay, and in central Pennsylvania. It was, I mean, it was like we were untouchable. We were an untouchable group of, and we just were writing so much together and talking so much about these larger issues. And it just kept showing up in, you know, all of the writing that we were doing together. And it's funny because one of the students actually, I just saw on social media, of course, I just saw right before the reading earlier today that this one of the students who works in the governor's, who has since graduated and works in the governor's office with Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania, signing a bill to protect rights for Commonwealth employees who are LGBTQ in PA. And it was just beautiful to see her sitting next to the governor when he's signing the executive order with the pride flag across the table. But this poem really, and I was able to write a poem very specific to her marriage when she got married last year and read it at her wedding. So this poem, I know it's a long story that I didn't need to tell, but that poem just kicked up a lot for me, and recently learning that news about her.
Well, when we go into that workshop with our students, I know for myself, it sounds like for you too, it's often just as much for us as writers as it is to be a teacher of writing, in those kind of settings. And it can be such a refuge for the students too. I just try to give a little context to the people attending the webinar. Pennsylvania, it's like, yes, there's like Union Strong Pittsburgh, and yes, there's like, liberal, diverse Philadelphia. And in the middle is where Shippensburg is, closer to the Mason-Dixon line than, I think, equidistant to the state capital. And it's, it's kind of Appalachian. There's a very strong Mennonite community. It's very beautiful in many ways, but it's, from what I am hearing and seeing in your poems, there's a lot of a sense of threat and the sort of like deep historical threat, not just in addition to like personal experiences.
And that's exactly where I think the energy of many of these poems comes from, is the deep historical and very personal. It's really a fusion of those two. I was very well aware of, it's actually a very, I guess it's I hate to say it this way, famous hate crime. I mean, that's a ridiculous way to frame that, but on the Appalachian Trail, not far from where I live, like 10, 12 miles up the road. And it was a lesbian couple camping. One was from Ithaca, New York. The other was from Virginia, and they were shot at, and one died, the other survived to tell the story. And I think about that every Saturday when we drive through the Michoud State Forest on our way to the farmer's market, right? It's in a way to pay homage to this lesbian couple and the loss of life. And it wasn't considered a gay hate crime because it's not a law here. And speaking of which, I'm going to read the poem around that. It's called Notes from the Commonwealth. And the name of the road where the couple, Rebecca White and her partner, parked their car was called Dead Woman's Hollow Road, Cumberland County, Pennsylvania. You watch the news to find out that lesbians don't wash away after drinking dirt, that the dirt didn't absorb all the rain last week, that there's everything to name and no voice to repair the rainbow, that the history of queer was murdered in the Michoud State Forest. I heard about the woman who ran from the echo of hate, one shot at a time. I mean, I went to the grocery store, bought mushrooms covered in dirt, rinsed their white heads, poured olive oil on them. The news in the background. There's a storm coming, a flood warning, maybe a murderer on the loose. I cooked and swallowed dirt. 11 miles away, a tree named Rebecca sank into the land. I am on the other side of the rainbow in the dirt that doesn't make the news. Lesbians sprout like wild strawberries. Their root systems tangle with murder. In Pennsylvania, crushed bones cut into the land, and daughters collapse before they are auctioned off every Sunday morning. This ritual is for sale in the church parking lot, where blessings smell like gunfire, and fingers break the sound barrier as they dig for life. The dirt under the dead woman's fingernails, sacred. The yeast in her throat, scooped out, melted down, and served as communion.
Yes. Yeah.
I always forget to pause after reading some of these because I know they are heavy, and I think they need to be heavy. For me, they did, because I was working through a lot of anger and pain, learning about this, and then being confronted with a lot myself.
And in addition to like some of the kind of, I don't know, almost vocabulary motifs that I was noticing, the potatoes and dirt, obviously, and ammunition, but also prison. And if it's sorry for me to say, you teach at the prison, at the Franklin County Prison. And I saw like echoes of that through so many of the different poems. And I was really interested in how that like impacted what you wanted to talk about in the poems, and sort of even the way you approached including that in your poems as an idea.
Sure. I mean, yeah. So when I first started at Shippensburg, teaching at Ship in 2014, I was like, oh my God, where am I? I don't understand this. And I didn't fit with those academics. I mean, I guess I kind of do now. Time has passed and they got me. But I felt like, what else am I going to do? Where can I find this community that I can actually kind of connect with? And I was like, oh, I'll go to prison. And so I did. I went and started volunteering. I was bringing 12-step groups into the prison first. And then I started to run poetry workshops for the women. And I was only supposed to go in for like hour interval, like an hour class. But the guard, they forgot about me a couple of times. And I was able to sit there with a group. Sometimes it was 2 of us, sometimes it was 15 of us. And we would just read poems and cry and write, and like in the cinder block room where there's no window and behind a little piece of plexiglass, their senses are cut off from any sort of stimulation. So when the poems were at the center of the room, so I'd bring in we'd do writing workshops, and some of it was very much literacy writing, literacy classes too, in terms of arts literacy and reading literacy, because there was a few folks who couldn't read. So we'd write poems phonetically, and the stories that the women had to tell, or the voice into, I don't know, it was just, we were writing together. And so being in there sometimes for 3 hours and not realizing how much time had passed, and enjoying every minute to just allow someone else's voice to be heard, was powerful. And that gave me, some of these poems started right in that room with them. And others are just things that stayed with me after I left that space. So as I was, experiencing Pennsylvania, in terms of everything that made me feel uncomfortable, it was also everything that, embraced me. And that was those were the moments that embraced me. And I, in return, I hope I embraced them in return. I was able to put out a little chapbook for them as well, and showcase their work and take it beyond the bars, right? Behind bars, and carry it into the community, which was really powerful. So I think it's the spaces that I enter, to kind of circle back here to your question as to how and why I'm writing about this. It's the space I chose. I'll find spaces I'll very much specifically force myself to enter, even if I'm scared or uncomfortable, to take those kinds of risks, to be of service. And then the writing happens. So I'm not doing it to write, I'm doing it to be of service. And then the writing happens because I can't help but write.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and also a way to go back to our students, to be able to take those risks with young people and not just preach, oh, do this, I'm going to do it with you, and we'll do it together.
Well, and that's, I'll pick up, there's a question in the chat that I just noticed that I'll bring in because we're talking about our students. It's a question from a student that we both know. And Casey Lemming wanted to ask about the potatoes as well. And she said she noticed that there's a ton of farm imagery in general, and so many potatoes and the exploding sweet potatoes, and it's so personified. And she said, I usually associate you with tomatoes. So how did potatoes become so centered in the Book of Dirt? Hi, Casey.
Hi, Casey. Oh, that's fantastic. Casey was a part of the group that I was mentioning earlier, being so influential. And I brought tomatoes into our class often, and we'd make fresh guacamole. Well, we did that once at the end of the semester. But the potatoes entered as just another image. I had students who lived on farms, and I didn't understand where the farms were or how to access them. And I'd ask them, can I ever visit your farm? And they allow me to come and meet their families and get close to the land in a way I didn't understand before. And so, and not to say, nature and farming was foreign to me, but the farm and the land that looked so vast and empty in the distance when I moved to Pennsylvania, between warehouses and farmland that's private, you can't just go trespass on people's farmland. So I was able to get close to the land. And I think the potatoes are still showing up in the work that I'm writing now. So that just might be a thing that I have to figure out still to have a solid, articulate answer. It's a representation of roots in the earth that are nourishing, and I'm not even really thinking about that consciously. It's just an image and a concrete thing I keep returning to as symbolic in a lot of ways.
Well, potatoes are kind of amazing. My girlfriend and I tonight for dinner, we were going to eat potatoes and we were out of potatoes. So we went to the garden where we grow potatoes in buckets, and we dumped out a bucket and dug the potatoes out of the dirt. And every time we do it, I'm like, how did that dirt turn into something that you can eat?
It's amazing. The potato is also the first successful thing I grew in a garden here in Pennsylvania. So there you have it. That's what it is. It's the first successful thing that grew in the soil in the backyard. And then the tomatoes. Casey.
And then the tomatoes. Well, I wonder, Nicole, if there's one more poem that you kind of had in mind to share before we start opening it up to questions and see where that leads us.
Absolutely. I'll read the first poem in the book. You have now begun reading the Book of Dirt. And on the title page, it reads, the opposite of prostituting is when I learned how to read. It was like sucking a lemon. I spit out pale yellow seeds, open the door to earth, look out the window. All my gay symptoms rally in the library parking lot where I swallow my name, blindfold my votes, and line them up against the wall. I go to the county jail where I teach women to write their guts on styrofoam and cinder block and floor wax. I write Commonwealth and Red State and Ode on the edge of disaster, where clouds cast a shadow in the shape of a knife. I cut the faggot label out of my shirts, slice open plastic bags stuffed with childhood and grass clippings from a blue state. This is the book where a gay girl is in another closet, where the doorknobs fall off and the queer goes for a walk on a rainbow leash. I mosey from dream to dirt to dream and see the jar of hallelujahs glowing on my nightstand. The opposite of gay is a seedless lemon spiked on a galvanized nail. There's a penny resting on my tongue, or maybe that's the remnants of a dream I can't quite remember. When I wake up, there's a giant bitter orange tree flowering at the foot of the bed. Cold, hardy fruit drops between my wife and me. We empty the jar of hallelujahs and cross-pollinate citrus with survival. We don't belong, says the fruit. We don't belong is the logic of other books. We survive. We survive on the resemblance of other oranges. Depending on ripeness, our skin peels and our blood deepens. The sweet orange is not a wild fruit. The pomelo is its maternal parent. Our root systems twist together below ground.
Oh, I love that closing image so much. And I'll have something I want to follow up on, but I just want to encourage people in the Q&A or in the chat, definitely drop some questions in. And if you don't want us to say your name, you don't have to tell us what your name is. But it would be so great to hear what you're interested in about poetry, about writing poetry, about, living as a poet. So go ahead and ask us some questions. And the one thing that I'll follow up with, we talked about dirt and potatoes and prison and tomatoes. And I think from the poem that you read about the hate crime on the Appalachian Trail is part of that, but sort of throughout so many of those poems, the ammunition and bullets. And I know where our school is in Pennsylvania and, not far from downtown Saratoga, all across America, kind of an armed camp. And I just try not to think about it all the time. But when I was reading your poems, I had to really think about it. And it's scary and important. And I just wondered if you wanted to tell us more about that.
Sure. I think for me, there's a poem in here too that is a response to Pulse. It doesn't specifically name the shooting, but it accounts the amount of people who died in honor of them. And I think it was just the anniversary of that a few days ago. So I think also in my classroom and the classroom I know you teach into, I don't know what time of day you're in there, but the time of day I'm in this classroom in our building where our offices are as well. During the afternoon at a certain time, you can hear the echoes of the gun, I don't know, what do you call it, where you go practice gun shooting? I don't even know that. So yeah, whatever. So you can hear it in the background, like just the echoes of the guns, right? And then it's just that, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. I mean, a lot of my students talk about, hunting, and we talk about guns in different ways. But then when we talk about, the crime and the hate, it becomes a different reality. So for me, it was literally understanding, being hearing the firing of the guns during a class and having to shut the window to get the sound out. And then thinking about some of these big larger, important social issues that we often talk about in classrooms. And then thinking about poetry, and it's like, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Holy shit. So, yeah, I mean, the guns keep showing up and the bullets keep showing up. I remember we lived on a busy street and when we lived in Shippensburg, right near the university. And I was often afraid to sit like in the front window facing the busy street if the curtain was open. I know that might be my own stuff but there are things that are happening, we've been confronted in very uncomfortable ways, and it often escalates to violence that involves guns. So I've been very aware of that in the spaces that I've been occupying, and also very aware of all the people we lose as part of, oppressed communities. So the bullets just keep coming until they don't. Yeah. Which is like, when is that?
When is that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a question about, there's poems in your book about Bitchtown, PA.
Oh dear.
and about where is it, or what sort of place is Bitchtown, PA? And
it's wherever I am, whatever town I'm in, it's Bitchtown, PA. Well, it's funny because, I talk about, being rejected from small towns. I showed up in a couple of the small towns here looking for a place to live. Oh, where are you originally from? Oh, New York. It was like saying I killed 20 people and they were afraid I was going to harm them. So it was wherever I am, whatever town I'm in Pennsylvania is Bitchtown, PA. So that's the simple answer to that question, to the couple of poems that are titled Bitchtown, Pennsylvania. Feeling that escalation and immediate confrontation and being on the defensive
Mm.
and navigating those scenarios. And I think it's fitting for me to say whatever town I'm in, whether it's Pennsylvania or not, that it's Bitch Town.
Is there one of those that you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. This is called Bitch Town, Pennsylvania. It's one of them. Some bitch like me sets the fire, cranks the heat, burns the toast, swallows the flare. The flower pots and front lawns blaze one little fire at a time. Flames sprout from the gardens on Hanover Street. Yellow fires and red fires and motherfuckers drive trucks that are on fire. The chicken hut, gas station, post office, and the neighbors, all on fire. When the train passes through this neighborhood of flames, a gust of wind knocks over the bitch who lit the first match. Her fire burns on fear. Pretty soon, the black sky swirls in flames, and the clouds shrivel up, dry out, and drop like dog shit to the side of the streets and highways where heroin addicts are left for dead, where farmers grow lettuce and trade sheep for shoelaces and guns, where starving cows are auctioned and eaten alive, and the people confuse women for beef and love for needles.
Thank you for that.
I think, oh, go ahead.
No, you talk.
I just that last stanza there where, confusing women for beef and love for needles. And I always seem to be circling back to, the drug problems around drugs too, and issues around addiction. And the struggle that we're often afraid to talk about. So that's a major underlying motif or theme, however you want to say it, that carries throughout many of the poems as well.
And we have a question about process, which I love because I always like to talk about process. And the question is, having so many years of writing under your belt, have you found it easier to find your flow? Does it just feel natural? Or do you have a process that helps you ignite that?
It takes me a while to, if I have, like, for example, the Book of Dirt, Because I Did Not Die. As far as process goes, I find myself centering around a reoccurring image. The dirt shows up on almost every poem in the Book of Dirt, but it's not about, physical dirt most of the times. It shows up as physical dirt. It shows up as dirtiness, as being a woman being dirty, or being gay as being dirty. It just keeps showing up. So for me, as far as process goes with writing, a manuscript or a volume, it has to start with just one poem and one image, and then, and then another poem. It's like one poem at a time, but before that, even, it's really one image or one line at a time. And I was talking to a friend recently too, and we were talking about how we think in words or images, and different ways people retain images in their brains. And I was, I feel I often think in images, and then the words shape those onto the page in a poem, I think. I don't know. And it seems to be changing though, because during the pandemic, well, let me step back for a minute. After every poem I write, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to write another poem. It's never gonna happen again. It's over. That's it. I did it. I wrote my poem. It's never gonna happen again. And it's because I feel like when I show up to the page, I'm asking myself, or attempting to get out of my own way, because I'm not thinking. I'm not forcing myself to think. I'm connecting to language and emotion, and I'm trying to be the observer, or the in that way. So when I start, and to fill up on language, in order to be writing, I need to be reading. So if I'm not reading something or filling up on language, I'm usually in a stagnant place with my writing process. So I thought I was never going to write again after, I think I'm never going to write again after every poem, but then I do, because I just have, it becomes this almost this pent up energy that if I don't release it, it's like I'm gonna start being rebellious or doing weird stuff. And but it isn't a sort of outlet. I'm such a little mischievous, troublemaker. So as I started writing letters to a dead poet with a friend. We started writing letters to poet John Ashbery, who was a New York school poet and a poet that I didn't read when I was supposed to, air quotes, read him. And felt always like, oh, well, I don't understand him and he's over there. And then I challenged myself to engage with it because he's such a process-based poet with this sort of stream of consciousness, the way the language breathes on the page, and each word an associative writing as well, with allowing yourself to just go from one thing to the next. So we started writing letters to dear John Ashbery for over a year, and I'd write one and send it to my friend Dante, then he'd write one and send it to me. And it allowed us to, really break into an epistolary poem and a dialogue that I never planned on having. And I think we have a manuscript out of it. And it wasn't meant to be like, let's write a book. It was like, what else are we going to do right now? We have to, so it was helping to keep us, engaged with poetry, as everything was so like, what was the point of poetry what's the point? It was like at a place and time in our, history that we're still really in the middle of, as to what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? So to ask these big questions could be, lead you down a dark path sometimes. And so we turned to language and poetry, and ultimately we turned to each other. And that's in that sense of community. And we turned to history and the poets of the past who, and Ashbery is a gay man too, allowed me to tackle, being in conversation with another queer poet that has come before me.
Well, and just even at that level of writing letters, I know that's something I started doing, some other friends of mine started doing just during this pandemic, and it was so different than emailing or even calling on the phone, and just writing letters, because I think we had an opportunity, but also a challenge to slow down a little bit. And yeah, those felt like real life-saving moments when I get a letter in the mail.
Yes, yeah. And for me, and it just to on the tail end of that there, to be present for the process of what language is capable of. And, if we kind of keep bringing it back to it, it's capable of bringing us together. It's also used for weapons and other bad things, but it's also very capable of bringing us together in beautiful ways. And that's how I hope to use it, through poetry.
That's such a beautiful, closing sentiment. I'm going to invite Purdy to join in and kind of go over some of the things that we've been sharing in the chat as we go along, as a kind of closing part of it. If you're up for that, Purdy. Maybe you wanted to stay behind the scenes.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get my video up, but I don't know if I can. There are a few more LGBTQ plus events. I encourage folks to go to the Saratoga Pride site. They can find them there. They can also find them on the Saratoga Book Festival website. We have a bunch of fiction writers from, I'm not exactly sure where they're from the area, but Bold Strokes books are coming up next week. And then we have 2 short story writers on the 29th. So folks can check that out and join us next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Tuesday at 7. And thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us and sharing your poetry with us. And I can't wait to see you again in person.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for putting this together and raising, LGBTQ voices during Pride Month locally in Saratoga. It's just fantastic to see the sense of community. And the little chat before the reading started, it was just beautiful to watch the folks behind the scenes here have small talk and that sense of community in Saratoga. So thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much for being with us, and thanks to Saratoga Book Festival and Saratoga Pride for including me in this process. And I'm looking forward to next Tuesday at 7 and the Tuesday after that at 7. Really wonderful events coming up. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.